Welcome to the Irishman, Englishman and Scotsman Football Podcast. Hello, good evening and welcome to another episode of the Irishman, Englishman and Scotsman Football Podcast. Joining me, as always, the dynamic trio. Kevin, how are you doing? Back in Austria, happy?
Yeah, ship shape and Bristol fashion.
Joe in cold Brighton.
Good. Very, very disappointed Southampton here this week, JP.
Which week? This week or the last 5 or 6?
This
how
week.
the mighty have fallen. And Fino in Bonnie, Scotland, looking as chirpy as last week. Right, cracking on again, once again, a full programme of fixtures. Tuesday, Wednesday, and a game on Thursday night. We're going to start Tuesday, 7 p.m. Central European time at Bramall Lane. Sheffield United, who fought really hard against Man City and really gave them a game against West Brom, who, you know, were behind and then led against Fulham, back to 2-2. This is a huge game for both clubs. It's really kind of do or die. And, you know, I mean, from Sheffield United's point of view, I was really impressed, like I said, a few weeks ago against Newcastle. They were miles a better team, and they really deserved to beat Man United at Old Trafford. I seen the highlights of the game against Man City, but, you know, they'd made Man City work for the win, and not a lot of teams can say that. West Brom showed a lot of fighting spirit after half-time, definitely, to come back out from 1-0 down against Fulham, and went 2-1 up, could have went 3-1 up. Fulham got a fantastic goal to level it up. You know, West Brom, of course, Big Sam will have them fighting through the whole game. I think 90 minutes this time, but I fancy Sheffield United to come through here. Fino.
It is a huge game, but I think it's more of a huge game for who finishes bottom rather than anything else. I think they've kind of already been cast adrift, and in my mind, it might as well be a championship match. You know, the only thing I can really say is that I'm sure that Fulham are probably hoping for a draw or a Sheffield United win, just so that they can try and build a buffer to themselves between West Brom and themselves. But to be honest, it's not a game that I think, you know, is going to be one for the ages, put it that way.
I mean, we are only halfway through the season, and, you know, it's only 7 or 8 points they're off to Brighton, I think, maybe 8 or 9 points, maybe 10 points, but teams have done it before. Joe?
I think Sheffield United seem to have become harder to beat, haven't they, in the last few weeks, which is obviously a positive sign for them. I watched most of the West Brom Fulham game, and yeah, similar to you, I was fairly impressed that West Brom actually came out and, you know, scored a couple of goals. They seemed bang up for it. But I just think, having not beaten Fulham, I can't see them going on to beat Sheffield United. I think if they'd have beaten Fulham, they'd have thought, right, you know, we're in this, win a couple of games, we're out of the bottom 3. But I just think they're so far off, and Sheffield United's playing well, so I think Sheffield United will do it.
The only thing I'd say there is I'm not sure that the manner of that defeat actually does buoy Sheffield United all that much. You know, City had rested a couple of players. It's an annoying goal to give away. They really were forced to struggle without the ball for almost all the game. I think they'll be absolutely knackered after it, and I think it's gutting to lose 1-0. So I think it's going to be actually hard for Sheffield United. And earlier on in the season, they had a few results like that as well, where they played really well but got beat, and it didn't do them any good then. And I'm not sure morale-wise that's going to be a massive boost for them.
Yeah, if they're going down, though, which they probably are, they'll definitely go down fighting. You know, it's not for the lack of effort. There's been so many 1-0s they've lost. And like I said, you know, the 2 games they won recently against Newcastle and against Man United at Old Trafford, they really deserved it. Joe?
Do you think that when Big Sam took the job, he'd have been expecting to bring in 5, 6, 7 players during the January transfer window to really kind of refresh the squad? But as it's happened, it hasn't really worked out, is it? I think they brought in a striker who came off the bench at the weekend. But I'm just wondering if he's done enough in the window to help try and keep them up.
There's at least been 2 or 3. I know that we'll probably talk about transfers as it's transfer deadline day, but, you know, Maitland-Niles is supposedly coming in on loan. They brought in Robert Snodgrass from West Ham, which I thought was a really astute signing. He's definitely a player that can help them, you know, win points. But yeah, I think you're probably right. I think he was probably expecting to have not a full squad to change, but, you know, to be able to quickly weed out who's really in for the fight and who's not, and then ship those who are not up for a fight out the door and bring in some reinforcements. But it just doesn't seem to have worked like that, and I think probably COVID has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, I just took the words out of my mouth there, Finn. I think COVID has a huge amount to do with it, really, for Big Sam getting players in. Snodgrass, I think I watched him actually. I watched the game against Fulham. It was on the BBC, a Freeview Premier League game on the BBC. I thought he was poor. He might be past it, possibly. But they will. Looks like they're going to get Maitland-Niles. Yeah, I just in any other year, I think Sam would have had more of an impact in the transfer window. Also at 7:00, Wolves, who lost to Palace against a buoyant Arsenal, who were goalless against Manchester United at the Emirates. Arsenal probably could have sneaked it. Man United could have sneaked it. It wasn't a great game, to be honest. Wolves, of course, like I said, lost to Palace, and they're on a bit of a dodgy run. They didn't look great, to be honest, against Palace, and Palace weren't great either. But this is like we said last week. I think Kev said, are we just in our heads? Are we thinking it's the Wolves as last season? But the reality is that they're just not that good anymore.
You're spot on. Wolves no win in 8 league games, and I don't think that there are much of any chance of them taking the points here. But I think if we look at Arsenal, that 0-0 draw against Man United, do we take that as a good result for Arsenal? Arsenal seem to be in this kind of weird flux state where there doesn't really seem to be much talk about them going after European places or the top 4, which we would normally associate with a club like Arsenal. They seem kind of cast adrift from that top 4 discussion, despite only really being 4 points off of West Ham in 5th position. So it's a bit of a weird one. I just wonder whether or not Arsenal are, floating along to mediocrity and mid-table, or if they're actually going to, look at that 0-0 as a line in the sand and go, right, we've still got the opportunity here to get, further up the table.
I think Wolves are just in absolute freefall, aren't they? We were talking the last few weeks how Newcastle were in crisis. They're in absolute meltdown. They're only 1 point behind Wolves now. I think, like you said, they won win in 10, haven't won in 8. You wonder if they're just, looking over their shoulders a little bit, and whether whether Nuno Espirito Santo could be the next boss to leave a Premier League club.
Yeah, I watched a fair bit of Wolves and Palace earlier as well, and I watched the highlights as well on Match of the Day. I mean, they created chances, which is a positive for them. Like Newcastle on that run, we're not creating chances at all. Wolves are creating chances, and eventually one of them will go in. But this one could easily end up in a draw as well. I don't know what the story is with Aubameyang. Is he injured? He wasn't playing at all against Man United. He wasn't playing. They had Lacazette up front. I mean, if he comes back, I'll give them a chance to, because he can just, with a flick of a switch, he can win a game.
I think they've got more than a chance. I think this is a solid win for Arsenal, who are a better team at the moment, much more confidence. I think. Southampton, like you said, are in a bit of a free fall, or we've been taking the piss a bit out, Joe. But even so, 4 points from the 2 games against Southampton and Man United, they'll be pretty happy with that, I would have thought. And it just sort of cements them as being back in the run. And they are missing a few players, right? I think they look pretty good, actually, having been really down on them, a couple of weeks ago. I think fair play. That's starting to look like a bit of a football team.
9:15 at Old Trafford, Manchester United against Southampton. Man United, like we said, just threw at Arsenal. They could have won it. And in this run that they've been on, a lot of times their big individual players have kind of created magic moments. A Cavani or a Pogba or a Fernandes. They just didn't do it against Arsenal. Cavani had a super chance at the end on the half volley where he just knocked it past the post. I thought they were going to sneak it in. But they're 2 without a win now, having lost to Sheffield United in a very flat performance and not super impressive against Arsenal. But I think they'll be happy to play against Southampton, Joe. Southampton on a 3-game losing streak.
Yeah, not in a good run of form at all. 3 defeats in a row. And what's been annoying is we haven't showed much kind of energy. I think against Villa we were pretty flat until the last 10 minutes when we were trying to chase the game. There were 2 pretty horrific VAR calls in this match, which were hugely frustrating. The handball, I've watched it 10 times. I cannot see how that is not a penalty. His hand is in a very unnatural position. The offside for Ings, I know it's annoying, but that has happened to other teams this season. If your hand is kind of pointing off, it's very frustrating, but I can kind of understand it. What disappointed me, I think, afterwards is that there was a bit of frustration after the match where Ralph came out with this quote saying, you need money to buy good players, and we don't have any. So I think he's starting to show a little bit of frustration. He's worked magic and worked wonders with the squad. I think he wants a few reinforcements, and the board haven't given him any. So I'm not really sure when we're going to next win a game, to be honest.
Well, the good news, Joe, is you got Newcastle after Man United, so away. Which brings me on to Newcastle, and also at 9:15 Central European time. Now, what a turnaround in one game, possibly. And I'm first going to speak about hope. Of course, Fino last week said the hope that kills me, and I probably would have agreed. But after the Leeds performance in the second half, even though we lost, I still said there was a glimmer of hope, a glimmer, And the last thing that Jermaine Jenna said on Match of the Day about Newcastle was, after this game, he said they now have something to hope for. And that's, I think, in 90 minutes, it's given them something to hope for. But there's a reason behind this, and I'll just go into it quickly. Newcastle beat Everton quite comfortably and were easily the better team throughout 90 minutes of this game, which nobody seen coming. Nobody, not me, nobody seen coming. I thought we were going to maybe fight a little bit after the Leeds performance and hopefully get something against Palace. Newcastle had a real structured game plan. And I've been really critical of them for the last few weeks about how we're the most uncoached team. This looked like a coached team. The game plan at the start was to kick the absolute bollocks out of James Rodriguez. They kicked him up and down the park. 2 players got a yellow card for it, but it put him out of the game. There was high press. Miguel Amaral is playing up front almost with Callum Wilson. There's balls down the channel, low balls. None of this kind of long ball up to Joe Linton or Matt Ritchie. It's balls down the channel, and then Callum Wilson, he was Shearer-esque in this game with his pace and his power. I haven't seen it. I'll never compare him to the King Alan Shearer, but, the way he bullied the Everton centre halves and the defence, and I think it's Luca Digne on the left back for Everton. He couldn't handle him at all. Jordan Pickford, who we spoke about last week, made a hash of the second goal because Newcastle were on the break, and he came out to meet Callum Wilson but didn't commit. And once you change your mind, it was gone. Saying that Wilson could have scored a hat-trick, hit the bar, hit the post, he missed the sitter. And then I just want to go on to Callum Wilson's comments at the end of the game. He said, we don't want to play like that every week, defensive. We want to go and attack. We don't want to sit back. Whether he was having a go at Steve Bruce or not, I don't know. Now, I said last week that Graham Jones came in. Graham Jones was former Luton coach. He was at Bournemouth. He's a Geordie. He was Roberto Martinez's number 2 at Belgium, that great Belgium team. But if you watch the game, and I watched the highlights again, and at the end of the game and some of the pictures after, because when your team wins, it doesn't happen in Newcastle a lot. I tend to watch Match of the Day after. I want to watch it, But Graham Jones is the one that's animated on the sideline. He's out giving hand signals. He's shouting at the players. And at the end of the game, he's got his arm around Callum Wilson. That's the best performance of the season. It was a complete, a united performance. And all of a sudden, we look like a really coached team for the last game and a half. But for the last game and a half, we've had a new coach in. So if you don't know the story here and you're looking at that sideline, Graham Jones is the manager and Steve Bruce is the assistant.
Yeah, I'm going to throw out a bit of a conspiracy theory here and say that Graham Jones is probably actually Newcastle's manager and Ashley just can't afford to sack Steve Bruce.
Exactly, because, you're looking at about 2 million. If he's to pay off Steve Bruce, about 2 million. So it's a lot cheaper to bring in a guy that'll work under him, who has experience with Ryan Fraser and Callum Wilson at Bournemouth. And, eventually, say he goes at the end of the season, Graham Jones wasn't an ex-Sunderland coach, Steve Bruce was. Newcastle fans will take him. Look, you're never going to win over the fans completely because of Mike Ashley still there. But this guy, I don't... Look, all I can see, the proof is in the pudding. The last game and a half, I've never seen them play so much attacking football since the days of Bobby Robson in one game. Saying that, they're still in a horrible position. And there's a long way to go on. There's a dogfight. And it's Palace next at home. And, you try and get through that and look at Southampton. Those at the minute are 2 winnable games based on the performance. But, I think Newcastle and the coaching crew have got to take it one day at a time.
If you look at that Everton game, the tactical things, we can get on to, Everton being spooked by a really high press from Newcastle. And as you mentioned, they did kick James Rodriguez up and down the park. And all it would have taken is one slightly too harsh a kick and that plan falls into tatters. As Martin Keown said during the game at the weekend, it is only one game. They do need to start putting a chain of results together, but there is that kind of glimmer of hope. Palace are so hot and cold this season. I wouldn't be surprised to see Newcastle pick 3 points up here, but you just don't know.
I think we know exactly what Palace are going to do. They're going to go up there, they're going to have 10 men behind the ball, and they're going to play on the break with Zaha and Eze, who scored a wonderful goal at the weekend. It was fantastic. So I know Newcastle are playing well, but I can just see a 1-0 Palace sneaky win.
Yeah, I don't think, on the basis of the last 10 games, if Palace didn't watch the Everton game, that they would sit back, Joe. They go on attack like Leeds did, because Newcastle were so negative and sitting back and inviting them on. But now Newcastle are going for this high press. Maybe Palace will do that. There's a possibility that there's a couple of players coming in here. Who knows? But there's a confidence and there was a real belief and they're fighting for each other. And there was a lot more to it, Fino, than just kicking James Rodriguez. They were so organised, as in Isaac Hayden was sat in front and protected the back four. The balls went down the channel. I think he's finally found a position for Miguel Almiron. He's this guy that was floating around. Now he's up there, and his work rate, all the work rate was out of this world. The energy level, it was like they're all on steroids. But again, they are in the position where they're in. So this is a huge game. I'm going to stick my neck out here, and I actually think we're going to sneak it. I'll go for 2-1.
Only thing I'd say is, will the effort be a bit too much for them? Because, like you say, worked absolutely their asses off. Looked like they had a couple of red balls before they played the game. I think maybe this, it's hard to do it twice in a row is all. And I think it's going to be a punishing game against Palace again as well. So no real prediction. I'll be interested to see, but it is hard to put in 2 performances like that on the spin in a short space of time. So it'll be a really good test for them. And they have been hit by injury and illness, haven't they? So let's see what the fitness levels of the squad are like. Good test.
Sponsored by Red Bull, Kev.
could be a good idea.
On the other hand, Newcastle have a lot of the players are back now. Lascelles is out with a hamstring, but Kieran Clark is back. Hendrick played out of his skin. It looks like Matt Ritchie might be staying. There's a lot of positives to take from the game. I'm not buying into it too much. I'm not going to be the boy who cried wolf. And there's a lot of work to be done, but it's a good base. And if we were playing somebody higher up the table or in better form, I wouldn't go for Newcastle, but I think Palace could be there for the taking. Newcastle did beat Palace away from home earlier on in the season. They are hot and cold, so, who knows? If you can keep Eze and Will Saha quiet, then I give them every chance. So, moving on to Wednesday, 2 7 p.m. kickoffs. The first one at Turf Moor, Burnley against Manchester City. Man City did the win against Sheffield United. Last week I called them delicious. But this was, gritty. Get the job done. And, it was the kind of the mark of champions. When you're not firing on all cylinders, like Liverpool last season, to grind out and find that ugly 1-0 win. Burnley have improved a lot in the last few weeks, I have to say. They really have. And but I just don't give them much chance, or anybody much chance against Man City. Fino.
No, look, and Man City have struggled against Sheffield United both times this season. I remember the reverse fixture earlier on in the season. I think it took a really strong goal from Kyle Walker to win 1-0. Burnley, they had chances against Chelsea until Chris Wood came off, and then it was kind of game over for them. Look, Burnley will make it tough. They always do, but City are firing on all cylinders. I know that we say that they didn't do so well against Sheffield United, but I just can't see past an away win. And I feel like we're not giving Man City enough kudos or discussing them in more detail. But such is the way that the league's gone. There's just simply more, interesting storylines and more interesting fixtures than City probably winning again.
It's not just that. Can you even remember the last time they conceded a goal? Honestly, I can't. I think it's a month. I think it must be at least a month since they conceded a goal. But I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm a great believer in streaks coming to an end. That's all. I doubt they will win. And slightly tongue in cheek, I've said they're going to win every single game until the end of the season. I think they'll have won the league They won't do that because they'll have won the league with about 5 games to go, I'm sure. But I think if they are going to drop points, this is the sort of game where I wouldn't be that surprised. Don't think they'll lose. I think, who knows? Maybe it could be a 0-0. Maybe it could be one of those awkward ones. So get your money on a 6-0. But no, 0-0 for me, this one.
Wow. Fulham against Leicester also at 7 p.m. Fulham 2, West Brom 2. And Leicester beaten by Leeds. No one really seen that. I knew it was going to be a good game, but I think for Leeds to win so convincingly in the end, I didn't see all the game, Fino, and I'm sure Brendan Rodgers will have them up for this one, after the performance. You said Leicester were very poor.
Yeah, they were. I just felt that Leicester approached the game pretty arrogantly, I think. And Leeds, came to play. They were, I think, probably the dominant team. I think at halftime, Rodgers decided to move around the defensive structure. I think he moved from, I can't remember if it was a 3 to a 4 or 4 to a 5 or something like that. He brought on another centre-back, and lo and behold, the centre-back that they brought on was the guy that played Bamford onside for his admittedly stunning goal. This game, Fulham need to just change draws into wins. Unfortunately, the longer that it goes on, the less likely I see them getting out of the relegation zone. I'd expect Leicester to win comfortably here, especially with their phenomenal away form.
I don't think Vardy is back though, and Leeds were very touch tight on Maddison. Maddison, what I seen in the highlights, didn't have much time on the ball at all. And of course, Vardy gives you the outlet with his pace and the balls down the channel. So I think he'll still be missing, which will give Fulham a chance. But yeah, the likes of Tielemans and co. Fulham don't have the firepower or the speed at the break that Leeds do. So I can only see this one going Leicester's way. Joe?
Yeah, I agree. I think Brendan Rodgers would have hated it at the weekend, being outdone by Bielsa. I think it will have really, really hurt his ego. So I think he'll have Leicester properly fired up. Fulham, yeah, they'll be really disappointed not to be in West Brom, but you'd think Leicester would have too much for them.
7:30 or 8:30, should I say, Central European time, 7:30 in the UK. Leeds at Ellen Road at home to Everton. Leeds flying at the minute, lads. And, if you want to upset Everton, we've got to do the high press as a Newcastle did. It's one team. If there is one team that's going to do it, it's going to be Leeds. I give Leeds every chance in this game. Everton had a full team out against Newcastle with the exception of Alan. Calvert-Lewin played and Richarlison played, James Rodriguez. But Newcastle made them uncomfortable, and Leeds make every team uncomfortable with their kind of do-or-die attitude. I actually fancy Leeds to beat Everton here. Kev?
Yeah, I think so too. Actually, yeah, I think that might be a tough one for Everton to come back from. Listen, the only thing I'd say, it's hard to predict these games. Like, I don't want to come across like a manager or something like that. But it really is hard right now, right? Really hard playing back-to-back games. Not every team is used to playing them. These two teams, maybe not particularly used to playing back-to-back like this. I just think it's hard. It's freezing cold, right? Everyone's got injuries. Everyone looks. I don't know where they're bringing these performances from. Sometimes, I mean, I look at players. Some of these players, back-to-back games in their 30s, maybe. It's really hard work. So I just say it's going to be tough for Everton. And so I think you're right, but just really hard to predict.
I think this is kind of low-key the game of the week. As you've mentioned, JP, that kind of high press from Bielsa will potentially do exactly what Newcastle did to Everton and spook them. The only thing I would say with Everton is that, Digne came back from injury considerably ahead of schedule. I think he was only out for 6 weeks. He was supposed to be out for 12. And I think you could see that at the weekend with how wasteful he was going forward. He was putting balls in the box that kind of were basically aimless. But yeah, if I was Leeds, I'd be really excited about welcoming an Everton team that, look a bit lackluster at the moment.
The defensive side of Digne, though, surprised me, Fino, because he has a huge reputation this season, but I was bullied by Callum Wilson for pace, for power, like the whole Everton defence. I mean, but, I expected him to, I knew he was good going forward, but I expected a lot more defensively. Saying that, like you said, he's just coming back. But, I'd fancy Leeds. Tasty game, 9:15. Aston Villa, who are on a little bit of run of form themselves, against West Ham. Now, Fino, I've only seen West Ham once this season, and that was when Newcastle beat them on the opening day. I expected a lot more against Liverpool, I have to say. I was disappointed in how they, didn't really get on the ball. Liverpool dominated. And if you've seen the text from Kev, you'd think that there was crisis in Liverpool. But, at the end of the day, I thought Salah's 2 goals, particularly the second one, where no team would have stopped them, you know what I mean? So I think West Ham probably need to bounce back. Villa, we spoke about this a few weeks ago, and we're talking about the games in hand. And I said, this is a team that I don't think it will affect because they rested all their players. If you remember, they played the FA Cup game against Liverpool with the under-17 team out. So the whole squad was rested. I know they lost to Burnley. They convincingly beat Newcastle. They beat Southampton, albeit lucky enough, with that Danny Ings goal at the end. But yeah, this will be a tough one for West Ham, Fino.
I mean, I'm never surprised with a West Ham result, whether we win, lose, or draw. I think it can probably be best described as West Ham having a bit of a nosebleed, being so high up the table. And I think we saw that with David Moyes. We were pretty negative, I felt. And I think Trevor Sinclair said it best. West Ham played the champions at the weekend. They didn't play the 11 players that were on the pitch for Liverpool. They played the aura of Liverpool rather than the actual team that was there, because they were there for the taking, in my opinion. Look, Salah scored 1 good goal. I still feel like Cresswell was a little too lazy in getting out to him and allowing him to shift it onto his left foot. The second goal, is a touch of class. West Ham, they need to get over this kind of naivety if they're going to be, continuing to fight for Europe. That being said, it shows how far a team like West Ham have come, that a loss against the champions feels like a missed opportunity. Got the opportunity to dust themselves down against Villa, who will be strong and will be tough. They're still riding high despite, Joe's already talked about them, consistently tight VAR decisions. It's also a huge game with implications for Europe. So West Ham could go 6 clear of Villa with them having 2 games in hand. And then the teams all around us, that top 10 basically are really tight at the moment. And so if West Ham do harbour any ambitions of European football, they kind of need to go out and put the Liverpool game into the back of their minds and just, go out there and get 3 points. But I don't know if I expect that.
Yeah, Villa are a real threat with Ollie Watkins, Grealish, and I can't remember the guy's name on the left wing with the dreadlocks, but he's lethal. And I think that they will. I think Villa will finish in the top 5 or 6 the way they're going. They spent 200 million quid and it's working, and they're hard to beat, and they're really good on the break. So yeah, I fancy Villa to sneak this one, Fino. Sorry. Also, 9:15, Kev, Liverpool against Brighton. Liverpool are back. We're not hearing any more crisis. We don't want to hear any more defensive crap. You know what I mean? They got these world-class players. What I wanted to say, though, the second goal from Salah was absolute world-class. And the first goal was a brilliant goal. But how many times has Salah scored from the same position? From that right-hand side of the penalty area, he dips the right shoulder, dinks in, left foot into the top corner. It's kind of like Ian Robin back in the day. You knew exactly what he was going to do, but you just don't seem to stop him. As soon as Salah did that, it was like he's going to go for the top corner. From a defender's point of view, try and shift him onto his right foot maybe. I know he's a lethal forward, but that's my only complaint about it. Liverpool deserved to win. They were back to their best. 2 huge wins now over Spurs and West Ham. Surely you're going to beat Brighton, Kev.
I guess. I think what I'd say is two things. First of all, it looked fun again, didn't it? So probably not, probably not if you're a West Ham fan. But second half, right, it looked like the players were enjoying themselves, and that hasn't happened for a while. And I thought it was really interesting that Klopp stood up and said it was my fault against Burnley. Right, he said I just messed that up, and you can't blame the players for that. Second thing, we talk a lot about winning ugly, and you've picked up on that as well. Last 2 seasons, it's not just been about winning ugly, right? That's or finding a way, as we've said. What Liverpool have done in the last 2 seasons is they've been patient enough to work out the opposition, and then with the help of that analysis team that they clearly have. Now, and I don't have any inside secrets about their analysis team, but they're clearly really good, right? So Liverpool at their best. One of the great things they do, they went through a phase last season and the season before of scoring 1 million goals immediately after half time. It was incredible. And I think they've got a video analysis team, which is, let's just say, as good as anyone else anyway. And I think a combination of the players being able to work it out on the pitch and then getting some really good technical backup, particularly at halftime, but actually during little breaks in the game as well, meant that they've scored a lot just after halftime, or scored like just in after there've been little breaks in play, and they've got like little tips from the sidelines and stuff like that. So I think they've got their mojo back a little bit in that sense. So I don't think it's just about confidence. I think it's that, and I think we're looking at a really, really good football team.
I think there's an element of the media and the fans being, having the wool pulled over their eyes a little bit with the centre-back issue. Yes, there's been 12 centre-back pairings in 21 games for Liverpool, but actually that was still a very strong front line, albeit not your first string front line. You still had Thiago, you still had Gini Wijnaldum, and you saw with that breakaway goal that you still have world-class players like Shaqiri, who's probably a second or third string player for Liverpool. Can Brighton do it twice in a row? Probably not. But I do hope that they stay up, not least because they play some good football, but also that they've given Scottish football two absolute heroes. First of all, they've given Connor Goldson, who's been ever present for Rangers. He's played, I think, 98 out of the last 100 games for Steven Gerrard after having quite a serious heart operation. And then they've also given Scottish football Shane Duffy, who has been arguably one of the consistently worst players I have ever seen play football in Scotland. So I think, from a Rangers fan, I would like to see Brighton stay up just purely for that.
That's quite funny. Obviously, Duffy was the centre-back partner for the captain Lewis Dunk for many years, and he has been outstanding. For the last 3 games, they've kept 3 clean sheets, Brighton. No one expected them to go to Leeds and win. They did. No one expected them to beat Tottenham. They did. I don't think Liverpool will have it all their own way in this one. I think Brighton will make it very, very difficult for them. So I think it will be an interesting game, actually.
I'm just going to say one more thing about that goal. That goal from Salah, that breakaway goal, the second goal, was so good you'd need a poet to describe how good it was, wouldn't you? So if only we had one.
Indeed, it was very poetic. Now, absolutely, I've got to say, it could be the goal of the season, Kev. It really could, because he just took it out of the sky and, instant control. And the other foot, so calm, just knocked it past the goalkeeper. Good point there, Fino, about Liverpool. And, don't buy into it. Don't listen to any of the moaning, really, because they got these. They won the Premier League last season, the Champions League. Like I said, I always go back to it. I don't even include Shaqiri. You've got the main 3 of, Salah, Mane, Firmino. Then you've got Diego Jota, who's world class as well. Of course, Belgium are one of the best teams in the world, Divock Origi, and you've got Shaqiri as well. So, all over the park. Wijnaldum, Thiago Alcantara, world class Spanish player, Bayern Munich last season. Give me a break, really. Just come on. It's there's more than enough there to win a game. So yeah, Liverpool will beat Brighton quite convincingly. But Brighton, Joe, I think that the mood's got to be good in Brighton now. I mean, obviously those couple of wins, Tottenham was a huge win. They've really got to believe now that they're going to stay up.
Yeah, definitely. They've got a fairly big gap now to the bottom 3. Obviously, they had this kind of monkey on their back for ages that they hadn't won a game at home all season. They've now broken that duct with the win against Tottenham. I think they'll go to Liverpool with no fear. It's a complete free hit. So yeah, let's just see what happens.
Yeah, let's just see. I don't think they'll really care though, what happens in Scottish football.
But I
Brighton,
do.
To be honest. You do, all right. One game on Thursday, Tottenham against Chelsea. Of course, Spurs, like we just said, beaten by Brighton. And Chelsea, new coach, got the win, 2-0 against Burnley. Not super, when a new coach comes in, players are keen to impress. And we know that it's a short-term thing at Chelsea always. I think Tuchel's on an 18-month contract or something like that. But, I just think momentum is a big thing as well. And, I know it's Mourinho against his old team, but Spurs are kind of flat at the minute. I think Bale might be out, might be injured. Kane, you kind of fancy Chelsea to kind of do this.
Yeah, I think 100%. We asked the question last week, how will Spurs get on without Bale? And I think it was there for all to see, wasn't it, against Brighton? Not very well. It all seems a little bit predictable, this kind of Spurs slump at the moment. You've got Mourinho post-match ranting about his defence and coming out with some very odd comments. We've seen this all before, haven't we? Whether at Chelsea or Man United. You just wonder where it's all going to end up. Can they get out of this slump? I agree with you, JP. I think Chelsea, that they're going to find some form. I found it interesting that they went back to having Mount, Abraham and Hudson-Odoi in the team, three of the players who were very good for Lampard last season, but who specifically Hudson-Odoi and Abraham weren't playing a huge amount this year. He brought those back in, they got the win, and I think they'll beat Tottenham.
To be honest, I think that this could easily be the worst quote-unquote big game that we've seen so far this season. I watched Chelsea-Burnley and I get it. Tuchel, German pragmatism, but I just didn't feel like there was any real spark. And okay, yes, they're playing Burnley, but, they brought in Marcus Alonso, who I had no idea had fallen out quite severely with Lampard. And you've got Ben Chilwell there sitting on the bench. I still feel like Chelsea are trying to shoehorn Havertz and Werner into this team and give them the game time to acclimatise, when actually what they need to be doing is just winning at all costs. And yes, they got the result against Burnley. I don't know whether or not they'll get the result against Tottenham. Tottenham will be properly up for this. Mourinho will be properly up for this. But to be honest, I reckon it could be like a boring 1-1 draw.
I think what's going to happen is Chelsea are going to get 107% possession in this game, and it'll end up somehow 0-0. I think I'm with you, Fino. It'll be a dreadful game.
Was it not also the reverse fixture this game where it was also like an incredibly boring 0-0 draw, and we were all kind of clamoring over Mourinho saying that he was, a tactical mastermind because they'd had, 0 expected goals or something like that. Yeah, I think that this is going to be a very dour affair.
What's happened at Tottenham? 2 wins in 6. Before Christmas, Fino, you yourself had them as champions-elect, and Kane and Son could do no wrong. Chelsea, as we know, have been dodgy for the last few months and obviously got Lampard sacked. But Spurs, saying that, I think Kev brought us up a few weeks ago as well. Look, Spurs, a few wins away from the top 4. That's how the league, is. It's crazy this season. But, you've got the quality there. And you've got Gareth Bale. Has Gareth Bale lost it, really? I know he's injured, but when you look at the forward line they have, I know he's a very negative manager in how he sets up, but I expected Tottenham to be a lot better than they are coming into February. Fino?
We've not seen as many sackings this season as you would normally expect to see. Especially at this stage in the Premier League campaign. And I think it's actually because, you've hit the nail on the head there, JP, that most teams are only 2 or 3 games away from, shooting up the table. And, Mourinho, yes, he's kind of banded about as being a negative manager. I think probably Tottenham were a bit of a victim of their own success at the very beginning of the season because they were so lethal going forward. I think they were scoring near enough every time that they went forward. And Kane and Son were so in sync that, they just couldn't miss. And now when things get a little bit tougher, the weather's not so good, so maybe the pitches aren't, as nice to play on. They're not quite the carpeted, they're not carpeted, and so, the ball's maybe taking a different bounce. And it all starts to become maybe a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy that, the media are against them, or, the VAR's against them, or the bounce of the ball's gone differently. And because of Mourinho's kind of very deflectionary press persona, maybe he's starting to, say different things internally than he's saying externally, and some of the players aren't reacting to it.
Yeah, also if Spurs fall down the table, and if they finish, say, let's say 8th or 9th, and they're in the cup final, they could beat Man City, but I don't see it happening either. But if they don't, they lose to Man City. And if they finish 8th or 9th, like I said, the money that they've spent on Bale's wages, they got the Brazilian boy in, would the board look at saying to Jose, because Spurs for me were always, when I was growing up, an entertaining team. They had Gaza, then later on they had Klinsmann, Gisira, you know what I mean? The kind of six players up front, more or less, and they were always good to watch. But just now, they're just horrible.
Probably not since the early 70s, late 60s maybe, have they been really successful domestically. Their last title was, 2008, and it was the League Cup. So should they be anything else other than, an 8th or a 9th in the table kind of team? I think what was quite interesting, I was listening to TalkSport the other day, and they had a Tottenham fan phone in and say that they should sack Mourinho and bring in Lampard, which I think would be a very interesting, dynamic come Mourinho's inevitable return to the Premier League at some point.
We mustn't forget they got to the Champions League final a couple of seasons ago, and they're constantly in and around the top four. So yeah, I think they should be pushing on. And the money they spend, they should be pushing on. But yeah, I think there's a possibility there that Mourinho could be gone before next season starts if things keep going the way they're going. But this is a crazy season. Who knows what's going to happen? It is transfer deadline day. So we got to talk about transfers. We do have a special guest on. He'll be coming up pretty soon. But to be honest, lads, it's got to be the most low-key transfer deadline day in a long, long time. And, COVID's got a lot to do with that. There are no big moves. I think, Kev, Liverpool might be one of the busiest teams. If Liverpool get all those defenders in, what are you going to moan about then?
I'll find something. Don't worry. Yeah, I think they're juggling a few options out there. It'll probably end up. I remember like a transfer deadline day about 20 years ago where we ended up with 2 goalkeepers. we made a mess of it. Yeah, so probably something like that. We'll probably end up with about 13 centre backs as of next week, and then suddenly everyone will be fit. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's COVID. Like there's not as much money schlossing around at the moment.
It wouldn't be transfer deadline day without the man in the yellow shirt. Earlier on today, I caught up with Jim White. Hello, my name is Jim White, and welcome to Deadline Day. The clock is ticking. I'm like a kid on Christmas Eve, mainly because I'm annoyingly overexcited and willing to partake in stories that have no truth at all. I can tell you that Liverpool are racing to sign Schalke defender Ozan Kabak for around £2.5 million, but they're in a race against time because the German transfer window closes at 4 p.m. It looks like the club, however, will sign Preston centre-back Ben Davies ahead of the 11 p.m. transfer deadline time, and that fee is believed to be around £500,000. Breaking news from Tottenham. Apparently, Harry Redknapp was seen slowing down his car and wound his window down, but we're just hearing right now that he was actually at a McDonald's drive-through. Newcastle have blocked Matt Ritchie's move to Bournemouth and won't allow Matt Longstaff to go to Watford. Steve Bruce, however, said he hopes to get 1 or 2 players in before that deadline closes. More breaking news, and this could be absolutely massive. I'm just hearing in my ear right now that there's a black car has arrived outside Anfield, and it could be Kylian Mbappe. I don't believe it. It's actually Peter Odin-Wingy. Back to you in the studio, JP. It looks like Newcastle are going to sign Joe Willock on loan from Arsenal. I asked Manfred about him earlier on, and he said, 21, potential, he can light a game up, and then he has the potential to go missing as well. But Newcastle do need a midfielder. Another possibility is Chowdhury from Leicester, but that depends on Leicester getting a player in, and if Newcastle can get a player out in midfield. I think Matt Longstaff might be off to Watford, who knows. Matt Ritchie to Bournemouth, looks like it's been called off. Newcastle want to keep hold of him, even though Bruce hasn't played him in a while. And if he does go, although Bruce said he's open to him going, I think it'll signal a change in the style of football and the intent, and that might have a lot to do with Graham Jones, because Matt Ritchie is a guy who can get the ball in the box. If you're going to play these big strikers and long ball, he's the man, but hopefully this high press, we won't need him. Maitland-Niles is a cracking player at Arsenal. Arsenal don't want to sell him to a direct rival in Leicester. Why is he not going to Southampton, Joe?
Well, apparently Southampton were in for him on loan. We're a bit short of fullbacks, so I think they wanted Maitland-Niles to come in and play either right back or left back. But Maitland-Niles sees himself as a midfielder. He wasn't going to play in midfield at Southampton, so he said no to come in.
It's quite interesting because clearly Arsenal don't view him as a fullback either. If the rumours are to be believed that they're looking for cover for Kieran Tierney, apparently they're potentially in for Patrick Van Aanholt. They clearly either don't trust Maitland-Niles at fullback or they see him elsewhere. From a West Ham perspective, I think we're a bit gutted that Josh King didn't arrive from Bournemouth. It looked as if he was potentially going to be there earlier on in the window. We brought in Jesse Lingard, God knows what that's going to look like in Moyes' system. But I think the biggest transfer for West Ham is that they kept Declan Rice, and it looks like now with Lampard gone, they'll keep him for the foreseeable.
Yeah, Josh King, actually, Joe, I read earlier on, might be a possibility for Southampton, with maybe Shane Long going the other way. Just going back, Fino, we'll go into that in a second, Joe. You said, was it Arsenal were in for Van Aanholt?
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, that would only be his cover. I mean, he's played a few times for Holland, and if he goes to Arsenal, surely he wouldn't be ahead of Tierney.
Well, no, but I mean, I think if you spoke to any non-Celtic fan in Scotland, you would realise that Tierney can be quite brittle, and I think we've seen that already at Arsenal. He seems to be quite injury prone. So they said, either Van Aanholt or even Ryan Bertrand as well. So they're clearly looking for somebody that can, play in this similar mould as Tierney, that kind of marauding left back, but on, considerably lower wages you would expect.
Yeah, I haven't seen much of him this season, but the games I did against Newcastle in the Cup and the league game when he came back from injury, and he was, probably the best player on the pitch for Arsenal on the left side, like the balls into the box, and he beats players with ease. He's, I doubt there's much between him and Robertson. I mean, Scotland seem to have, two really good left backs there. There's no one else that really sticks out. There's no big transfers, I think. Or if you look at the top teams, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer came out and said, don't stay up late. We're not expecting anybody. That about almost wraps it up for us, folks. There are games coming up, of course, on the weekend. But as always, before we go anywhere, we couldn't leave you without our poetic genius, Kev.
Very kind. It's been a while since I had a rant about VAR, so I've saved it to the end. Short and sweet this week. Say what you like about this strange campaign, but it keeps dropping diamonds again and again. This week we had Liverpool back from the dead with a goal from Salah that's still stuck in my head. Newcastle reborn, Callum Wilson's brace, and it's a shame that this year's title race is already decided, a deal that is done as City playing host to the Blades again won. Most of their rivals dropped points yet again, with Leicester outclassed by Bielsa's Leeds men, an early barn strike that Leeds soon had answered, the pick of the 3 goals, a stormer from Bamford. Crisis, what crisis, cried Klopp's fragile team to maintain the faint flicker of a league title dream. 3-1 v West Ham, attacking perfection. Their second from Salah, a massive ejection. To all those who thought that their spirit was weary, as Trent won the ball, took one look, found Shaqiri, who swung in a pass to set Mo Salah through, the deftest of touches, and it's goal number 2. But if there's drama to come, if the tensions to tighten, they must follow up with a win against Brighton, who were perfectly poised to catch them unawares after classily winning 1-0 against Spurs. Oh, Jose, I must say, you need a plan B with Kane still confined to the infirmary. Could plan B be Bale? Not anytime soon. There's more chance of him winning the Open at Troon. He seems out of love with the game at the moment. Where's the fire that made him such a great opponent? The coach's diagnosis? They lack self-esteem. As a fan, doesn't that make you just want to scream? How about the other big sides from the smoke? Arsenal no longer the butt of our jokes. A draw thanks to Man U's ranked profligacy. Edinson, he must score. Oh no, Cavani. That was more like it for Tuchel's Chelsea, who played with control and verticality. 2-0 v Burnley and looking much better, and even a rare goal from Azpilicueta. Regular readers of this rhyming column will know my opinion of VAR is just Sodom. It's not just the replays, the constant revisions, it's the way they back up the refs' awful decisions. Southampton fans must have felt total displeasure. Denied a spot kick, then a ludicrous measure. The armpit of Ings and Cash's backside as the Premier League takes us fans for a ride.
Great stuff, Kev. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Fino.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you, Joel. Also, thank you to Jim White, who from Sky Sports, who took time out of his busy day today to chat to us earlier on. Guys, if you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side. Thank you very much. We'll be back on Friday, and enjoy the games. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to hear more of our podcasts, please click on the red subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side. Thank you.